You're listening to episode 64 featuring Johnni DiJulius.
I have always wanted to be someone that gave life. You know what I mean? So whether it's, not being negative or being ungrateful or any of those things, it's okay. I'm here right now. I'm in a group. How can I give life?
Yeah, gotta aim for the top like, hold up. Yeah, I can never doubt myself, I know better. All of you critics be acting like you know better. Blowing the smoke, but I know when the dust settles. Said I'm in my element, it's evident that there's levels to the game.
So what's happening, people? Welcome back to the Athletes podcast. And I'm sitting down with my man, Johnni DiJulius. This is the first episode of our new season, and I had to do it with my man, JDJ. I texted him. I said, how long are you going to be on the ground? Because he's always in the air, and I don't mean just on planes. He's normally floating through clouds. So, JDJ, I appreciate you coming on, man. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. You're my guy. We got to chop it up. We probably got a lot to talk about. Let's get it.
I know. So as I told you, I love starting out with 5 questions. So first one for you, where's your favorite place that you ever jumped from?
Jumped. Okay, so that's specific. A lot of people ask me, oh, where's your favorite place you've been? And that's a really difficult question. It's like, what's your favorite movie? Like, it depends. Am I laughing today? Am I crying today? Like, what kind of movie, right? So jumping, my favorite specific base jump was a building in Panama because buildings are usually illegal. We had permission from the city, and it was 873 feet. It was just an insane visual with the whole city in the background. But my favorite place, so visually, aesthetic, is Lauterbrunnen, Switzerland. Even if you don't jump, I recommend going here. It's small little Swiss towns, cottages, the whole stereotype, hidden in the Swiss Alps. And that whole place is imagine you go to a ski resort and, there's a sign hey, this is a bunny slope. This is a black diamond. This is this. It's a base jumper haven where you go there and each exit is named. So I'm not is this the exit? I don't know. We should just try it. It says it's a 12-second rock drop. This exit is called Yellow Ocean. Here's the landing area. Here's what direction to land if the winds are west. It's a whole. So that's one of the coolest places I've jumped. Not just because it's so friendly to us, but it's so freaking beautiful.
That's dope. So on the mat, what was your favorite match? College, high school,
match.
Anything. Favorite match. And not just favorite match, but favorite opponent too.
I always say this, it's funny. Some of my closest friends, a bunch of my close friends, Ty Mitch and, a bunch of the guys at Ohio State, you're familiar with a bunch of those guys, and Kenny Courts and Demas. Shout out to Love is Blind, right? Josh Demas. Mm-hmm. And this is nothing about it. It's weird how sometimes you feel a more, and this is a weird word to use, but a more intimate relationship with the people that you hated. You know what I mean? It's weird, So I wrestled guys in college that I wrestled a lot. I wrestled Corey Clark 5 times, Gulabon 6 times in 2-year span. Montoya wrestled a bunch. That's my guy. I like Eric Montoya. He's a cool dude. Mm-hmm. My favorite moment was probably Gulabon at Big Tennis when I was losing. I don't know if you remember that, but I hit a throw with a second left. But that's just one move, and that was really partial because I'm partial to that one because it was at Ohio State. That was great. Mm-hmm. But my favorite memory to tell people about win-wise was actually probably Jason Ness at the U.S. Open. That one was pretty special to me. That was beat a Hodge Trophy winner. He was the number 1 seed at the U.S. Open. I had never All-American in college. I'm coming out. People are asking the questions, why is he still wrestling? He did an AA. Usually you have to be an AA to keep competing, da-da-da. And I felt I was good enough to compete with these guys regardless. And that kind of solidified it in my head too. Damn, yeah, I'm supposed to be here right now. I'm going to keep training, keep competing. So that was a really pivotal place for my own mindset as a wrestler. You know what I mean? So that was probably one of my favorite wins ever.
Yeah. What's a really inspirational person? Somebody that's really touched you and kind of really influenced you.
Great question. So I like people who see the world differently. Not to be corny, and this isn't my person I'm picking, but a Steve Jobs type of character where they see something that is so normalized, right? I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day, right? It's so interesting how a wedding ring or an engagement ring, if you don't get someone an engagement ring, people question, oh, you don't love them, right? Like, it's weird. But we made this thing up. Like, what if I wanted to get an engagement puppy? What if I wanted to get an engagement bracelet? Do people still question, like, oh, do you even love your girlfriend as much as you da-da-da? And like, I always find it funny, and I like to question why we do things the way we do. And it's just not about engagement. It's about anything. Hey, you got to live together before you get married. You got to be married before you have kids. And I understand there's religious things that are tied to that, but the people that aren't as religious, they still follow these steps that we totally made up. So I love questioning the status quo and things that we are implicitly, tied to from birth. And somebody that did that I really admire was a guy, he passed away. His name's Shane McConkey, right? Now, Shane McConkey was a base jumper. And he basically just like looked at the world and was like, why are people living the way the world tells them to live? And then he lived life on his terms. Now, a lot of people look at that as selfish. Base jumping is selfish, this, that, and the other. But I admire people that it's not like the hipster, like, ooh, I'm different. Like, I'm not saying that, right? But more like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, if playing it safe, you don't really innovate a lot. You know what I mean? And if you're going to be an innovator, you got to look stupid. And I like questioning things. And that to me is very fun. But a more relatable person, if it's going to be wrestling related, I'd have to really think about that. Because I've been around some fucking cool people. Yeah, can I swear? I don't even know. I swear.
Of course you can.
Fuck. I've been around some fucking
So the next question for you is, with being around all these cool people that you've talked about, who was somebody that you just couldn't stand wrestling? Like, it was just like, I got this guy in, like, you're looking at brackets, and obviously it's always one match at a time. Everybody goes those. But you're like, man, I'm going to have this guy in the quarters, right? Like, I have 2 bouts, and I have this guy, and it's an unorthodox dude. You're unorthodox as it is, but, like, who was that guy that just bothered the shit out of you?
You know what's funny about that? I talk about this a lot at camps. I do a lot of camps for people that don't, are listening that are familiar with me. I do about 80 camps a year, right? I see like, between 5 and 10,000 kids. I know it's a big margin, but it's varies per year, right? I see like 5 to 10,000 kids a year, and I always tell this story where we as wrestlers and athletes, we get caught up in like the uncontrollable so much, and that's such a guilty thing that we have. Like, oh, I don't match up well with this guy. Oh, this guy beat me last time. I don't want to wrestle this guy. And obviously, like, I'm trying to help kids work through that. So I tell this story about, remember Mac McGuire from Kent State?
Yep.
I've never lost to him. I'm like 5-0 against him. But I never scored a single takedown in all 5 matches. How crazy is that, right? So first time we wrestled, he took me down. I escaped. I rode him in the second period. I escaped in the third period. I won 3-2. Second match, I reversed him for a win. Third match, I got like a turn for a win. It's always something weird like that. I got a reversal one time, and I rode him out, and I won 2-0. The craziest things, right? So, Kent State and Iowa State are wrestling at the national duels. And I'm at Ohio State. We just beat Hofstra in the national duels. We have the winner of Kent State and Iowa State. And it's so funny because I was so invested in this duel meet because it came down to heavyweight that I was like, oh man, because I did not want to wrestle somebody that I didn't match up well with. I was really good against the Jason Nesses and the Brewers and anybody tall and long and lanky, I could hit my dump. But the shorter guys, right? I wrestled Nathan Tomasello in the room, or like the Dardanes is, even Zach Sanders, shout out to those Minnesota guys. I've named like 6 of them. They gave me problems because I loved hanging on that arm. And if I can get underneath to my dump, I can kind of leverage that. It's harder with those short, stocky guys, right? So I looked at it like such a dragon I had to slay. Mac McGuire fit that category. He was harder. He was a left leg lead, right? And I struggle with that. And I was so invested in this heavyweight match. And this. Kent State wins. And I emotionally took a loss before the match even started, which is so toxic, right? It's so bad for us as athletes. And obviously, in hindsight, I'm learning so much about it, like why that's wrong. And Travell Delegnev actually talks about this a lot. He's like, when there's something that causes you like discomfort, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to have this guy, I match up bad with him. What if you could make it say like, ooh, I don't match up good with this guy. I'm going to have him. And you get excited for like the puzzle you have to solve. Yeah. Obviously easier said than done, right? But I do try to get athletes to look at something like that more. Instead of getting excited, like, ooh, this guy's hurt, You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm only going to have 80% of his best. It's like, get excited for the hard thing too. You know what I mean? Get excited for, hey, this isn't your best path to the finals. This is a tough path. This guy you usually beat, but he is a bad matchup for you. Get excited for that. You know what I mean? So I'd say Mac McGuire. Even though I beat him every single time, shout out to Mac, I did not like wrestling him. Because the other guys that I had, that I was back and forth, that I probably hated wrestling more, I won and lost, and it was like a little bit of a rivalry and whatever. Mac was like stressful because I beat him every time. So I was like, shit, how am I going to figure this one out this time? You know what I mean? Like, I got to try and get a takedown. I don't know. That's a long answer, but probably him.
Yeah. So the last one before we really dive a little bit deeper into the conversation is, it's funny because I've talked about you with friends, and I'm like, because your clips have gone viral, and I've had friends send me stuff like they're like, hey, did you see this? And I'm like, yeah, that's my boy Johnny, right? Like I get texts from people, and they're like, hey, have you seen this? I'm like, there's this guy hanging out of this out of this hot air balloon, and he drops it. Like, I'm like, yeah, like I just talked to him about this the other day, right? And because that's when it went on ESPN, and everybody was posting this.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was actually my first viral video.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right. They're like, how do you know him? Like, well, Johnny was a wrestler, he's D1, but how would you explain yourself? How would you characterize who you are?
Great question. Wow. Never really had someone ask me something like that. That's cool. This is funny. This is like, so I'm at this party one time, right? And I'm not close with this group of people anymore, so I don't want to name drop them, but it's in Stockton, California. You can use context clues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Context. So I'm at this party, and there's a bunch of people that are like just fucked up. And I don't drink. I've never smoked before. I never drank before. Side note, I'm sober. But I hang with anybody. I don't care if you're the most liberal or most conservative, or you're famous, or you're homeless, or anything in between. I could probably kick it with you and chop it up. I could probably find some common ground. I do like that about myself, right? But I'm at this party one time, and this dude, I swear to God, was like cracked out. Like he was on something. And he was being like weird and aggressive to everybody. And it was just a weird vibe, right? And he's talking to me. And even me, who could talk to anybody, I'm like a little bit like, yo, bro, like, I don't know, I'm going to go over here, right? And then he gets like sober for like a half a second. He looks at me and he goes, men never forget compliments. We never forget, you know what I mean? Because like we get so few, we'll remember forever, right? This guy looks at me and he's cracked out. He sobers up for a second and he goes, you have a lot of life inside you. It's very rare to see here. You give off a lot of life. And then he went back to being fucked up. And ever since then, that was in like 2020, maybe during COVID, I have always wanted to be someone that gave life. You know what I mean? So whether it's, not being negative or being ungrateful or any of those things, like it's okay. I'm here right now. I'm in a group. How can I give life? You know what I mean? We missed a flight. Hey, it's okay. Maybe it's meant to be type thing. And in my head, maybe I'm like, fuck, I really wanted to make that flight, but I want to be somebody that gives life, right? Like gives energy to people. And I think that's a really important thing for anybody to try to do. So I think, I don't want to be cocky and call myself that because I obviously like, I'm not the best in the world at that. There's times I struggle, but that's what I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
So that compliment stuck out with me a lot. And I'd like, if I died tomorrow, for that to be representative of who I am as somebody. Johnni DiJulius, he gave a lot of life. He had a lot of energy in him, and he gave it to other people around him and brought them up. I'd like that to be.
That's pretty dope.
Wait,
so
let me put this. I know this is your thing.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you think your representation would be in a couple words. Let me hear yours, just so I can, get a little back and forth.
Honestly, and I've honestly thought about this a lot, just probably more so in the last like couple of years, because now I'm back in Texas. I just moved back to Texas a little bit over a month ago. I'm in Austin again, nice. So I'm back here. But I thought about it. I thought about it more when COVID was happening, 2020, and I moved back home to be with family. Like everything's shutting down. I'm here basically by myself, right? Like I'm not gonna be stuck here. I'm gonna go home. My girlfriend was in Pennsylvania. She's from my hometown. So I'm like, instead of her trying to move out here,
you're Easton? Were you Easton?
From Easton, PA. Yeah. Instead of like trying to get her out, because we were talking about that at the time. Like now she's with me in Austin now, but instead of that, I moved back and I was like, I want to make sure that I'm with the people that I care about the most, right? Like my grandfather, he's older guys in his 80s, 90s, right? Like my parents are now in their 70s, like, and I was just like, I want to make sure that I'm that family type of person. I want to make sure that I'm that motivational type of person. And like, that's why you only really see one version of me on social media. You only see, you only see the positive parts of me. Everybody's life
for the people during a hard
exactly
time.
Right. And people are like, it's weird that you post videos of you working out, whatever else. And I'm like, it's weird to you, but when I hear my cousin say to me,
this is me.
Yeah, like when I hear my cousin say to me, like, I look at your videos and that's what inspires me to go to the gym, right? Like I can care less if I have, 100 million followers or if I have one, right? Like if that one person is listening, then I did my job, right? So like I just want to be a person that like you that gives life, but like I want people to know that like I'm real. You know what I mean? And I earned everything that I ever got. Like you look over my shoulder.
I'm not posting videos for the wrong reasons.
Exactly, right?
And if it's a megaphone for one person, that's all it needs to be.
That's all it really is, right? So, and not so much that, but like I am my own person. I come from I come from a famous family. You see the stuff over my shoulder. Like that stuff is signed by my uncle, and I got plenty of things that are in here signed by him. So like that's a big deal to me, but I wasn't handed anything, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, this is your last name. This is what you're going to be. This is who you are. Like I'm out here grinding and I'm doing it. Like to the point where a lot of people in the wrestling community, I can even remember when I met you, like nobody knew who my uncle was. You guys knew who I was because of what I was doing. So that was always like a really big deal to me. It was just being like my own person and being like that inspirational, even if it's to one person or 100 million. So
no, that's a lot of respect. And I get a lot of verbal like debates with a lot of people. It's funny how when we post videos, maybe it's me telling a story about traveling or jumping or whatever, adventurous, or it's you more inspirational on the side of working out, uplifting, health, all that stuff. The strangers oftentimes are the ones that are like, dude, that is so inspiring. And for some reason, we'll get like close friends to us roll their eyes. Like,
yeah,
what's he trying to do? Like start a podcast or something? And it's like, I don't think people have any idea. It's not about caring about likes, right? I'm doing what I want to do. And it doesn't have to upset people so much. I get a lot of that. I don't know if you get a lot of that when you're posting your stuff, but like I get a lot of that. And it's so strange. Like people should support you. You're posting gym content, whatever it is. It's like, I'm going to support that 110%. If I like watching social media, I should also like people that create the things to watch on social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For some reason, when someone's close proximity to us, we eye roll it. And you know what I mean? I think it's a really powerful thing that you don't give a fuck. You do your thing. You want to just help whoever it is that's willing to watch your stuff. That's a lot of respect. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell.
Hell
So
yeah, bro.
Appreciate you flipping it, but I'm going to flip it back on you. And I want to go back to the years of high school wrestling and you figuring out that wrestling was your sport. I mean, as we're growing up, we all have different sports, right? Like I grew up in the gym. Like, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So how did you figure out that wrestling was your sport? And was it a match? Was it a practice? Was it a coach? Was it a loss? Like, what was that like light bulb moment? Like, shit, I'm supposed to be here.
I think there's a give and take to everything. I don't think there's a great overall rule for any situation. Like, hey, never do this, always do that. Kind of like a you shouldn't speak in absolutes type of, Yoda, what's he say? Absolutes is a path to the dark side or something like that, right? And it's like, oh no, a Sith speaks in absolutes, or only a Sith deals in absolutes. That's what I'm not even a Star Wars fan, but I like that quote a lot. You know what I mean? And a rule that a lot of coaches and junior high coaches have that they think is like profound, right? Is, it doesn't matter till high school and college. You don't need to compete that much. It's just about training, which is true. You'll burn a kid out, right? If he's going all over the country. But a big part of me being successful at like Tulsa and shit like that, it like created momentum for myself in my head where I was like, I'm the shit a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I'm the shit. And this is going to be the rest of my life. So it wasn't like in high school that I realized that. It was like young age. Like, yeah, I still played like, Little League baseball and stuff, but I was a wrestler. I played baseball, but I was a wrestler. You know what I mean? So a big thing of why I felt like a wrestler, and that was my identity in like 6th grade, wasn't because of just a specific coach. I've had very great coaches. It wasn't just because of a specific partner. I've had great partners. It's more so because I competed a lot. And I know that goes against what a lot of dads think. Like, oh, he doesn't need to compete a lot. And you know what? Some kids don't, right? It helped me. It made me like, this is what I do. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I do. And I really liked going all over the country when I was in 6th grade. New Jersey, Easton, PA, North Allegheny tournament, all that good stuff. Tulsa, Reno, Tournament of Champions. Like, when I was doing all those things, I don't know, it really shaped like one, my friendships and like social skills, right? Because you have to like learn how to talk to other people, this and that, people from all different backgrounds all over the country. Wrestling is kind of a blue collar sport, but it's still, you get a lot of like the, different types of people. And yeah, I think that really made me say to myself, this is what I'm going to do until I can't do it anymore, which is what I did.
Yeah. And how did it feel to get that first, like, back then it was probably like a letter to your high school, right? Like recruiting was different back then, right? Like,
it was Columbia in New York, Ivy School, and I had like a 1.8 GPA, and I'm like, I don't think they fucking did their homework. like, I don't do my homework. I know you didn't do yours. If you're sending me a letter.
Yeah, was the plan always to stay home and go to Ohio State, or was it whatever the opportunity is?
Yeah, so like a big part, it wasn't necessarily like a homegrown passion like for just being a Buckeye. Like, that's great, right? Shout out to Ohio State right there. But it was an accumulation of, one, it made sense to be home because it's home, right? It's good. And it's far enough away where you can live on your own, do your own grocery shopping. It's a couple hours from my actual hometown. But a big part of it, number two, was the recruiting class, right? When Logan and Hunter and Cam Tassari, and then Kenny Courts and Camp Latano and Derek Garcia and all these wrestlers, Josh Demas, when they're all committing in the same year to 2 year span that I am, all of a sudden it's like, we could do something really special right here, right? Like, before we came on campus, my recruiting class, all we talked about was we're going to win a national title our junior or senior year. And fortunately, we did. We won nationals our junior year. And I'm sure a lot of recruiting classes have that, that goal. But it really felt like we were going to.
Thank you for listening to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. We will be right back after this short break. Hey, are you trying to figure out how to navigate this whole college thing? Well, listen up, because the A2A Academy is here to help you navigate everything college prep, both on and off the field. More than just another college prep program, A2A Academy provides you with an all-encompassing experience designed exclusively for high school student athletes who want to excel in sports, school, and life. With A2A, you've always got someone to help you reach your highest potential. What sets A2A Academy apart from the rest? Well, it's simple. Their advisors and curriculum are one of a kind. A2A provides comprehensive support to student athletes and their families, guiding them through the entire college discovery as well as recruitment and application process. Every A2A advisor is a former college athlete as well as an active member of at least one of the leading organizations for college consultants. They've been in your shoes, and they understand the importance of choosing the right college both on and off the field. A2A Academy knows that there's no one-size-fits-all model when it comes to the college planning for student athletes. Every athlete is unique, with their own strengths, weaknesses, and passions. That's why the program works. A2A Academy advisors tailor their support to each student athlete's individual needs, helping you find the perfect fit for your academic and athletic goals. So whether you're a young athlete looking to score big in both sports and academics, or a parent wanting the best for your child's future, A2A Academy is here to help you succeed. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Visit A2A Academy today at joina2a.com/podcast to learn more about their comprehensive college prep program built specifically to sports student athletes. Again, that's joina2a.com/podcast. Now back to today's conversation. Yeah, and I mean, I can remember when you guys were there, right? Like, I was covering you guys, I was watching, I was right there in the thick of it. So I remember that recruiting class.
When did you start at Flow? What year? Was it like 14?
2014. Yeah. 2014 was when I got out here and started working with Flow, and that was like my first national, like really like big national coverage. Like when I was back home working for the newspaper in Easton, like I started doing a little bit of national coverage. I mean, the first guys that even really that I kind of stuck my toe into it with national coverage with a hometown newspaper was my boy J.O., because him and I grew up together.
Yeah.
And then Sammy Sasso, because Sasso was doing things on a really high level as an 8th grader. He beat Justin Mejia at Flow Nationals.
I remember,
I was his first ever interview. Called his house phone and did an interview with Sammy Sasso back then, and had to call his house phone to do it.
So like that was Sasso. That's my guy.
I know. Good to see that he's out of the hospital and doing well, right? So, but that was like when I really first started paying attention to the national scene, and I get out here and it was just like, kind of like drinking from a fire hose. It's like all these guys that I've never even seen before. And I'm like covering the college angle. It's not just the guys from my hometown. So it was really exciting. It was really, really crazy. So I remember like all those guys that you guys had and how good you guys were, and just like the parody that went on in NCAA wrestling back then, right? It wasn't just Penn State mowing everybody down every year and going home with a national title.
I mean, Penn State ended up winning a few of them, right? But it was a battle for sure. I wrestled. I was ranked number 2 in the country. I think Haran was number 1 when I was in high school. So I wrestled at Nazareth against Haran. And then I actually wrestled at the Easton Duels in high school as well. I'm not sure if you were covering it back then. I wrestled this really tall kid. I don't know his name. Like super tall.
Maybe Alex Crom, maybe?
No, I would know his name. I think he ended up going to Clarion. I'd know his name if you said it. Yeah. But I wrestled him in high school at the Easton Duels. Because they used to have a huge dual tournament. Blair would be there. Collins Hill, Georgia came up. Like
St. Ed's used to come in too, and it was a big deal back then. That was a real big deal. So, dude, let's keep going and talk about your inspiration, right? Like, where does the inspiration come from you? And let's dig into the huge mural that is behind you. Where does this inspiration come from, and what kind of makes you who you are?
Okay, so I like this topic. I'm going to paraphrase a good buddy of mine, Dylan Palacio. Okay, Green Toe. Now, he's going to say it a lot more chaotic than I will because he's crazy, right?
First of all, the two of you should never be allowed in the same room together. Right, so let's just stop right there.
So if you have a fire and you take lighter fluid and you put it on the fire, obviously the fire gets really big for a second. We use a lot of terms in sports. It could be anything about your passion, business, working out. We always say fired up, burnt out, stuff along those lines. We use them. An external motivator is like lighter fluid. It could be, hey, my opponent is working out down the street. Okay, I have to do an extra rep, right? An external motivator can be taken away at any time. Oh, my dad walked in, he's watching. My opponent down the street could quit wrestling. My dad, unfortunately, we all know how life works, could pass away. Should I still do the extra rep? So it's really hard for us to rely on external motivators. So what's an internal motivator? An external motivator like lighter fluid is important, but it can never be your flame. It can never be your flame, right? An internal motivator can't be moved. It can never be shaken, taken away. If somebody dies, I still do the extra rep. If somebody quits, I still do the extra rep. Why? Because I can, right? So my internal motivator, this is corny, this is super cheesy, but it's love, right? I love what I do. And that is really hard to move out of somebody. I love chasing the feeling and these experiences of being very present. Hence the word no tomorrow behind me, right? I love that feeling. And these things give me a lot of presence, right? Traveling is probably the number one thing, right? The yellow heart, that's for me and my girlfriend. We live here together. Flying and parachuting. I do like the casino. I can't lie. You got your Cleveland sports team. So it's not just sports, but it's just repping my hometown. I do a lot of wildlife diving with sharks. And then obviously my one true love that I ever started with was USA Wrestling, or just wrestling in general. So when it comes to inspiration, it's not like I need to go find things to inspire me. It's what do I love? And that will get me excited, right? Because what do we know is going to happen in life? Shit is going to suck sometimes. That's not me being cynical, but real life shit happens. People pass away, you break your bones. Sometimes you're out for things that you don't want to be out for. You go through breakups, you go through financial debt, whatever it is. Real life shit happens. And If you are doing something you hate and you're relying only on external motivators, that's a really lonely place to be when real life shit happens. If I'm doing something I really care about, it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows the whole time. I love wrestling. I hate sprints. I love wrestling. I hate cutting weight, right? It's not going to be sunshine and rainbows the whole time. But if I'm doing something I love and then real life shit happens, breakups, deaths in the family, etc., the whole 9 yards, it's not going to be easier, but it's going to be a little bit more manageable. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing something that I actually feel very present in. You know, so I see a lot of people doing things they hate. Like, no disrespect to anybody who works a 9 to 5 if that's what you really want to do. I am disrespecting you if you work a 9 to 5 and you don't want to do that. Now, if there's things like student debt and you had a kid early and that's a different story. I get it. You got to do what you got to do. That's a tough freaking, I can't imagine that. However, if you have the options and you choose to do that because society says you have to, and shit goes wrong, it's really easy for them not to be present. They sit in the toilet all day to avoid going back out to their boss. When is the clock over? When is work over? When is it Friday? And it's really hard for them to be present. So I think the most inspirational thing that I have for me is seeking these intimate interactions with reality that make me feel totally here. I'm not worried about what month it is. I'm not worried about what day it is. I'm just right here, right now, and I'm experiencing it full on. The thing that gives me the most is this one right here and this one down here. When I'm wrestling, you can't be anywhere else. And when I'm traveling, I freaking love that, right? And then everything in between, like the parachuting and whatnot. So that's my biggest inspiration. Seeking out these things that I love that make me feel very present, even when they're hard. They make me feel very present.
Yeah. So you've always been a thrill seeker, always been an enthusiast, but I think like once your wrestling career was over, you really cranked it up a notch, right?
Yeah, I definitely did.
Once that was done, you jumped right in that. Why, and pun intended with jump, why base jumping? Why jumping out of planes? Why
great. So
swimming with sharks, right? Like, why all these things?
Right, my mom, she unfortunately passed away when I was 16, but she got me started in wrestling, hence why I have her signature on my arm, your hand raised, right? So when I was like 9 or 10 maybe, she went skydiving. So fast forward, boom, I'm 18. I'm going into my senior year of high school. I turned 18 as I went into my senior year. And my dad, he knew I didn't party, right? And he was like, well, obviously you're not going to go out drinking and celebrate for your 18th birthday. You don't drink. Side note, 18-year-olds probably shouldn't drink anyways, right? But whatever, right? Kids do that sometimes. So he knew I was going to party. And he was like, well, what do you want to do now that you're 18? Like, what's something, should we go to like a casino on a reservation? One of those, native casinos? Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, that's kind of far away. That'd be fun. But, what if I tried skydiving? Mom did it when I was, 10 years old. Let's just see what that's about. So I went tandem. Tandem means you're strapped to somebody. I go tandem 2 or 3 times. Someone comes up to me at the drop zone and they go, dude, you're wasting your money. You might as well go alone. You're paying $200 every time you go tandem. Go alone, take the class. I was like, you know what? Okay. So your jump course is 25 jumps. You're alone, all 25, but people are like holding on to you, keeping you stable because it's really hard to stay stable if you don't know how to fly your body. And then over the course of 25 jumps, they start letting you go. You start practicing turns, somersaults, backflips, all that good stuff. And you really start to understand like air resistance and how to fly your body. And I fell in love with like the progression of that. Now, that was a really slow progression for me because I was wrestling at the same time, right? And
I actually remember when you were going through that because I think I saw you and you were like, yeah, I still have like 20 jumps until I can jump by myself.
So I didn't, wrestling was, I'm in my bio on Instagram and Twitter. I know this doesn't represent who we are, right? But it says wrestler, then base jumper because I'm a wrestler first, right? That's who I am. I'm a wrestler, right? Now, with that being said, I couldn't do a lot of, the traveling and the extreme stuff, which was always a goal of mine. I want to see the world, right? I couldn't do that because I was dialed in and I wanted to be dialed in at Ohio State. But boom, after wrestling's over, yeah, I did crank it up a lot. So skydiving led to someone saying, hey, dude, there's a bridge in West Virginia. One day a year it's legal to jump off of. And a bridge is a very forgiving object because on a base jump, if I jump off something and I have an off-heading opening, which means I'm facing a different direction than the direction I jumped, a building or a cliff that's a solid thing behind me. But if you have like a 180 opening, it's a bridge. It's a little bit more forgiving. You can just circle out on the bridge and land. It's usually a lot easier. Not to mention there's water at the bottom. If I couldn't make my landing area, I can land in water. That has its own scares, with drowning, but it's softer. We'll leave it at that. So they're like, hey, come to bridge day. I'm like, all right, it's a pretty big bridge, might as well. So I do it once or twice, and I loved it. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Which snowballs to going a little bit lower, going a little bit more technical, doing some buildings, doing some cliffs, and really like learning all I can. People look at base jumping and they go, how is there skill? You just throw a parachute, right? And it opens or it doesn't open. There's as much progression and growth and learning curve and skill and technique in base jumping as there is in anything, whether it's wrestling or baseball or football, anything at all. People always are going to have that, oh, that's easy until they do it, right? We have as much awareness as we do experience. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's not just as easy as, oh, it worked. The parachute worked. It's never as easy as that, right? So I fell in love with that progression, and obviously the consequences of a base jump are a lot worse than losing a wrestling match or something along those lines. But the feeling of ultra prison is also like that much higher as well, So it's not like, ooh, I escaped death. It's just a very, again, intimate interaction with reality. And I definitely seek that out the older I get, more and more. So that's kind of how I got started.
Is that how No Tomorrow was started? Was just by being in the moment?
It's kind of funny how No Tomorrow started. So my dad, I'm not sure if you're familiar with my dad. He has like 5 or 6 best-selling books on customer service. He owns a bunch of, businesses in Cleveland. My mom was a hairdresser. He was the business guy. So together, she was the hairdresser business. They started a bunch of salons and spas. He obviously ran the business side while she was the stylist. As those got really big, he started doing customer service, like speaking, like motivational speaking, but customer service side. And he works with companies all over the world. Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Lexus, Ritz-Carlton, just about world-class customer service, right? So he's like a very successful business guy. Mm-hmm. I'm like a business guy, a business father's worst nightmare, right? I'm like, I don't know what day it is, like, just running around the map, right? And, our parents, as you know, like the generation ahead of us is like, stack your money, work hard, like, how they are. And working hard is very important. But our generation is a little bit more like, hey, I see all the stuff they went through. And for some people, it didn't pay off, like working for their boss and this and that. So a lot of like millennials and like older Gen Zs, they definitely like chase experiences a lot more. You
it's more passion-based than anything.
More passion-based, yeah, for sure. And I think there's pros to both. The hard work grind, you need that, right? You need that. But also like valuing the quality of your life is very important as well, right? So finding that balance. So I'm running around the world and I'm, swimming with sharks and diving off shit and just giving them a heart attack. And he calls me one day, right? I'm coaching at Harvard at the time. I was coaching at Harvard. One, I love coaching, but I wanted to train. I was training for the Olympic trials qualifiers and all that good stuff. So that was a big part about why I wanted to coach, because it might sound selfish, like I wasn't there for just the kids, but it was a little selfish. I wanted to train for me. Mm-hmm. But he sees me doing all this stuff, and he calls me one day, and he's like, you mother effer, you don't even care. Like, you're on permanent spring break all the time. You're in Fiji tomorrow, and the next day Hawaii. Like, you have no money in your bank account. You're da-da-da. You only care about today. You don't care about tomorrow. And he hangs up. And he was trying to, like, get me to, like, lock down and grind more, right? And I'm like, yo, I called my boy Jake Ryan, Tom Ryan's son. I'm like, yo, what do you think about no tomorrow? And I was just talking about it like as a hashtag. Like, if I do something super dope, hashtag it like live no tomorrow. Be here right now, right? Maybe it's a hike. Maybe it's whatever. And he goes, oh, I love that. So then that snowballed into, why don't we just throw it on a couple t-shirts, like LNT, live no tomorrow, right? Why don't we throw it on a couple t-shirts? So that now, a couple years later, my vision for it is more, how can I inspire people to be in the present? It doesn't mean kill yourself off a building. That's not what it means. It could be if somebody loves working out, if somebody loves yoga, art, music, they want to start a podcast. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. Do it now. It's about being proactive for tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's like I was an oxymoron. It's be present, chase what makes you feel present, what doesn't make you think about tomorrow, and also don't put things off till tomorrow. If you fucking hate your job and you want to go be a chef somewhere and you can't do it right now, but you're scared about making rent, fucking do it now. Quick. Tell your boss you're done and go chase your freaking dreams. That shit's going away. You know, you only got a finite number of days in this world. You might as well chase it, you know? So that's what No Tomorrow is, and that's how it came about. And I don't know if you can tell, I get fired up about this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see your videos all the time, and I think the number one thing I always respond to you is just be safe. That's the number one thing you always get from me is just be safe, right? But on the other side of that are all these people that you love posting about, or at least like find fun in posting about, that want your shoot to not open or want you to hit the ground. How wild is it to start getting messages like that of people you don't even know what you stand for, wishing like horrible things upon you? How do you deal with that?
I think it's a representation of, I'm not some like cynical person about social media. I really do like social media, but I know a lot of people don't, and they talk about like how toxic it can be. And this is one toxic area of it, right? We as a society assert our opinion with very, very little knowledge, right? We see somebody jumping off of a cliff, and people will say to me like, wow, that person must, this is a real comment. Somebody said, he's void of feelings. He probably is an apathetic jerk who has no friends, and he needs to jump off things to feel something. I read that and I'm like, dude, if he knew me, like, I'll sit on my couch and watch every Harry Potter movie today. Like, you know what I mean? Shout out to Dumbledore, passed away yesterday. Like, I can do the boring of the most boring and the coolest of the most cool. I just show the fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So people will assert their opinion with very little knowledge. Fortunately, I get more messages that are positive. Like, I got this one the other day. It was like, hey, dude, my brother passed away when I was young. He used to ride dirt bikes. Ever since then, I've been scared to do anything. And because I see you doing some cool stuff all the time, it actually inspires me to get out there more and do some cool stuff and really, you know, take my brother with me, which is what he would love, on these adventures. And I was like, bro, like, maybe I'm not the actual reason. Maybe he was just being nice, but that's fucking cool. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. So these people will wish bad upon me without knowing me, and I think it says a lot about them. If somebody's saying like it'd be a lot cooler if his shoot didn't open and he doesn't know me, I think it's him saying I don't like my life. And maybe that's a bad judgment of me to make, but why would you want something bad to happen to somebody else when it has no impact on your life whatsoever?
Yeah.
Me jumping or not, I'm gonna die one day no matter what, right? Now the length of that, I could play it safe more or be riskier more, but I'm gonna die no matter what one day. So how I choose to live those days that affects nobody else should not get a rise out of you, but for some reason it does. It's so weird. Are you familiar with, and I'm kind of going on a run-on sentence, I apologize, but are you familiar with the term a Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I talk about that a lot, especially to kids. Like, so for listeners, I'll kind of paraphrase it. It's basically like when we look at something, we have uninformed optimism. Oh, I can do that. We're watching a UFC fight. It's like, dude, just get up. Like, how hard is that? Like, just get up.
Really hard.
Just get up. Right, it's really hard. Even people like on social media, it's like we're so guilty of like seeing these people blow up out of nowhere, like an Addison Rae, Charlie D'Amelio, like all these people, Jake Paul, and they're like, oh, dude, all they did was shake their ass and they got famous. And we have no idea how hard they worked. We have no clue. So this uninformed optimism that we have towards things is, again, just the level of experience we have. All of a sudden we start doing it. We have informed pessimism. We have, boom, wow, this is harder than I thought. And hopefully eventually you can work through that and you can have the best of both worlds, informed optimism, right? But people look at, you know, my lifestyle and probably your lifestyle with the lifting and the, oh, he just makes content. How easy is that? Like, people look at that and they don't realize all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and they make an opinion that is very representative of, I think, who they are more than being just curious. Just be curious. Ask questions like, hey, I see you post a lot of gym stuff. I didn't know that you work out a lot. Tell me a little bit about what got you into that. If they're just a little bit more curious, they could be a little bit less judgmental. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how I see it. But fuck those people sometimes, man. die? Like, what the hell? You got kids in your fucking picture bio, and you're wishing I die. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus loves all in your bio, and you're like, dude, it'd be funny if he impaled. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. When you first started posting people, I'm like, wow, hopefully these people actually see the things that you're posting and kind of calling them out.
I tag them sometimes. And
I do see that.
People will hit me up and they're like, yo, I messaged that guy. And I'm like, good. Fuck that guy.
Do you ever get nervous jumping off of anything?
Dude, I walk down stuff all the time. Like if I don't feel comfortable, and like the way I like to, from outside looking in, it looks very reckless. You're jumping off things. It's woohoo. You're doing flips. Now it is a very dangerous sport. It has inherent risk, of course. It's base jumping, right? You're jumping off of things towards Earth, right? But the way I like to describe base jumpers is they're the most like risk management, risk oriented, like calculated individuals. Imagine me and you are gonna rob a bank, right? I'm in the getaway car. You're running out. You're shooting out the bank. Yeah, what's up? You get in the car, boom. And I turn and I look at you and I go, put your fucking seatbelt on. You'd be like, why? Like I just robbed. I'm shooting at police right now. Like what are you talking about, right? That's how base jumpers are. Like it could be the littlest thing, and if it stacks the odds in our favor, we'll do it. So the base jumpers, like they treat it like a science. Everything is like there's a process and how I do this and how I do that. It's very cool and it's cool to watch. So yes, I get very fucking nervous, right? Now it's less about like, am I gonna perish? I don't want to sound with dark words with like death. It's less about that, and it's more about like, what's gonna happen after my parachute opens? Where am I gonna be facing? Am I going to be facing the wall? Am I facing away? Am I going to be too low where I'm not going to be able to make the landing area? Right? People think lower is scarier. Sometimes I have to make a certain place, so I have to open higher on purpose to get somewhere. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that go into it, and I get nervous all the time. Winds, wind direction, just a vibe, nothing to do with anything else. My pack job, certain controllables, uncontrollables. That I'll look at somebody and I'll be like, hey man, I'm walking down. And the cool thing about base jumping is if you're gonna like cliff jump into water without a parachute and you bail, all your drunk buddies are gonna call you a pussy. Oh dude, you fucking pussy, it's only 30 feet. In base jumping, if you say, I'm skipping today, it's like our culture, it's good decision. Good job. Like they build you up and don't make you feel, because you don't want to talk somebody into doing something and then something happens. That's not a good thing to happen, right? So I like that about the culture. It's very, hey, good decision. That was smart. Jump another day. It's not going anywhere. Jump tomorrow. You know, so that's cool about base jumpers, you know?
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So Johnny, we're to the end.
Would you ever skydive?
Probably not. No.
Come on,
I don't think so.
I'm going against everything I just said. You fucking pussy. Bro, listen. Let me just say, you don't have to. Of course, it's your life. Let me tell you this real quick. It is not a roller coaster woohoo. Base jumping is. Skydiving is like sticking your hand out the window of a car and feeling the wind blow back at you. It feels like you're flying. I promise you will feel so present if you ever want to and you ever like think about it. It's not going to be like, I just escaped death. It's going to be peaceful. It's going to be like, oh, this is skydiving? I thought it was like Spy Kids when they were falling when we were kids. Like, it's not that, right? It's like, oh, this is nice. Like it's very peaceful and very like euphoric. Not to sound cheesy, but if you're ever interested, I know a good little place near East Stroudsburg. I'll take you. All right.
I know exactly the person to call if I ever decide I want to get out of my Comfort Plus or my first class Delta seat and just get into the clouds. I'll call Johnny instead.
If you land in one of those things, those death tubes, I jump out. I land on my own 2 feet. That's scary. What you're doing is scary, bro.
My man.
Girlfriend. I took my girlfriend. So like my girlfriend's like the opposite of me in terms of like if I go somewhere beautiful, like I was showing her the coast of Washington, she'll look at it and I'm enthusiastic if I'm like, this is crazy. Do you see this? This is where Twilight was filmed. How amazing. Look how pretty this is. And the birds and it's moody weather. And I'm going crazy, right? She is like quiet, just taking it in. She's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is so peaceful. So we're like the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of like jumping off shit, she's never had an interest. But I asked her one time on a road trip, and I was like, hey, listen, we're passing this bridge in Idaho. There's a guy legally that does tandem base jumping. Would you ever consider it? And she goes, no, I don't ever want to do that. Then she pauses and she goes, however, I want to understand you more. So maybe I'll do it so I understand what it is that like you do.
Yeah.
So she did a tandem base jump and she liked it. She said she would never go again, but she did it and she loved it. And I was like, what about skydiving? And she said, no, skydiving is too scary. I'm like, you have no if you think skydiving is scary, you have no idea what you just did.
Maybe it's the distance that you are from Earth. You can't really see Earth when you're
Right,
jumping
yeah,
out of a
but
plane. So
height is very dramatic, and we associate height with danger, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite. Like the higher you are, the way safer you are, like exponentially safer. And it's funny how we associate height with danger.
yeah. And you've been to all 50 states now. Do you have like the outside like
Just
on
got my
another?
50th.
Do you have like a map that you've like put like pins in or anything?
Glad you asked. So this is not an advertisement, but this app is called Pin Traveler, and I like to I pin like every city. I'm so weird. Like I have my letterbox. I rank every movie I've ever watched. I'm a movie guy, and then I pin every city I've ever been to, and obviously I log every base jump and whatever. But I like to pin, all the places in the country that I've traveled to. We got a lot,
Yeah.
like in the Dakotas and Nebraska. I gotta get, but yeah, I like to pin everywhere I've ever been, all the cities, and yeah, it's people will be like, "Oh, what's your favorite?" And it's like, dude, favorite for what? Like favorite to feel like a somebody? Okay, California. To feel like you're in the wild? Okay, Alaska. If you want to feel, fall colors? Okay, New Hampshire. Like favorite for what? So it's hard to like pick one. I don't want to compartmentalize the answer to just one thing. So everything is cool. Fucking flat ass Nebraska all the way to mountainous Wyoming. It doesn't matter. Everything's cool.
That's dope, dude. So listen, we're at the end, and I always
I can
love.
talk
And
all
I mean,
I can
this
talk
is.
all
I
day.
mean, this has been a completely like inspirational conversation, right? But like,
Glad.
what's a piece of advice? I always love ending with a piece of
Yeah.
advice that you and I just saw a clip of you talking to wrestlers about what's their high percentage move, and that was so dope.
Yeah,
and seeing
I
all
like
these
that,
other
yeah.
people kind of come in and validate that was really dope in the community. But what's a piece of advice? It could be wrestling, it could be anything, right? It could
Yeah.
be life. What's a
Yeah.
piece of advice that you would kind of pass on to that next generation of athletes that are coming up?
The good thing about advice with real life is, wrestling is such a microcosm for life. Obviously, we all have like had that metaphor talk. Whoa, wrestling is what real life is like. So whatever advice I give, I think you can attribute it to both, right? And my advice and this isn't me saying it like, hey, I'm better than people. This is me saying it like, hey, I have to work on this as well, right? So I'm giving advice that I need to work on as well. And that is outcome-based goals are very dangerous. I think if you say to yourself, I want, win states, that's an outcome-based goal. Be a state champ, though, there is a difference between a to-do goal and a to-be goal, right? So if you want to do something, all of a sudden, when you get an easier route, you're excited. It's like, ooh, that guy didn't make weight. Oh, that guy's on the other side of the bracket. Oh, da, da, da. And if you want to be something, I want to be the best in the state. Well, that's more like, instead of I'm thinking about the state tournament, I'm thinking about right now, okay, is eating this, is this going to make me be the best or not? Is working out right now going to make me be the best or not? And then all of a sudden, you're not worried about like who's on the other side of the bracket. It's like, okay, who's ever in front of me, I have to beat them if I want to be the best. Because I actually have to be the best. I can't sneak it and like look the best, right? I have to be the best. So I think outcome-based goals and, worrying about the end result is going to hinder your performance in the moment. If the match is 7 minutes long and I want to be the best version of me in the moment, it's hard to have my mind 7 minutes in the future. Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? If I want to be the best wrestler that Johnni DiJulius can be right now, then be here right now. What's the next position I can improve on? Is it bottom? Get up. Am I in on a leg? Try to finish. Is he in on a leg? Try to, defend. So being more present, more no tomorrow. Doesn't mean you can't look where you're going. Hey, I'm on the right path. It doesn't mean you can't look in the past and learn from it. It's just if I want to operate at my highest level, I am going to be less outcome-based and more what can I do to better myself right now? That's I think an advice that hopefully I can work on better, and hopefully other people can pick up on and relate to.
Dope. Johnny, that's the perfect way to finish this stuff, man. I love everything that you've said this entire time. Is obviously every time we talk, it's a fun conversation. I'm going to continue to just message you nothing but be safe every single time.
Yeah.
But man, I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to end the recording, but I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss when another episode drops. Again, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you again next time.